I'm sure that many of us have felt in the last 7 months that we have no words. I've written that many times. I've said it many times when I've seen what's happening in Palestine, maybe even lost for feelings as we've seen what's been happening in Palestine and Sudan and Congo, and also things that we aren't seeing that we know are happening. And we are also aware of the imminent invasion of Haiti, and we want today to connect these various places and struggles because they are connected. There are sometimes no words to describe or to convey both the horror of what we have been and continue to witness, or sometimes even our feelings in response, not only in Palestine, but in Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Syria, Lebanon, West Papua, Haiti, which faces another colonial invasion, tragically this time with Caribbean and African collusion. The horror, too, of the ongoing, slower, but still sure genocide that is occurring here on Turtle Island against Indigenous people. Often we feel we have no words. Also, there is no calculus that can convey the losses or the disasters and the catastrophes. 40,000 people, 200,000 people, 15,000 children, 20,000 pregnant mothers. How many bombs? The numbers are both far too many and also insufficient to carry the tragedies contained in every life lost, every child not waking up, every limb stolen, every home destroyed, every separation born. These rents in the very fabric of life, in the fabric of Mother Earth herself, are under attack, and they have all torn into our hearts, and our thoughts and our dreams, and even into our very souls. I listened to Diane Brand speak from the Bocas Festival in Trinidad a couple of weeks ago, and she said that poetry can sometimes convey our dis-ease, our uncomfort, while also making new worlds through words when we feel we do not have them. And it is for that reason today that we turn to poetry. And Alex, I think you can play the first. So welcome to everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. Salam. I am Sada A.E., and I am myself Palestinian. I want to share a self-authored poem that mirrors the image of these wonderful Oriental blankets that I'm sure we all have a universal connection to. If you go online and you look up these thick Oriental blankets, you can get them from anywhere around the world. But these blankets are ones that I grew up with as a child. And besides being extremely comfortable and beautiful with very ornate designs, these blankets have changed in meaning for me and have a new association with everything going on in the Gaza Strip. This is titled Blankets. I hear the cutting screech of a Hellfire missile. Buzz of the drone, maybe these soft fibers can protect me from becoming ash and stone. I am not safe from the sharp noise. You hear it once, then you're gone. Mama and Siti told you to pack those blankets, fold them for the winter. I'm not safe from the sharp noise. You hear it once, then they're all gone. I used to make fun at these blankets, a universal experience, the cradle for my cousins and I, sleepovers in the night. The missile falls and spikes into my skin. Everywhere is a part of me, and now I am everywhere. My blanket is in a place. These blankets now cradle the dead and the misshapen. Blanket, you are still soft, your lion print covered in dust. You were once ruby red, now dyed with crimson and black rust. Blanket is now a sack. Blanket is now a cradle tomb. Blanket covers everything that happened to you.
Thank you to Sarah, who was a student of mine in San Antonio, Texas, and kindly contributed her self-authored poem for today. Next, Fadi, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. My name is Fadi Annab. I'm a Bani scholar. I'm speaking to you today from Treaty 1 territory at the University of Winnipeg. Uh, Hopefully, I'm loud enough when I read my poetry that the administration behind me hears me and hears the students from the first day of the encampment that's been set up here. Uh, for privacy, I'm just videotaping myself and the tent behind me. But yeah, if you're in the Winnipeg area, you're welcome. I know a lot of you are not. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here with you and just as angry. Some of this is very uh, visible and clear to you, but I'm also addressing this for the administration and the Zionists. Someone is asking University of Winnipeg. That's right, University of Winnipeg, and I'm very proud to say that. Okay, the poem I picked today to read is by Remy Kanazi, and it's called Normalize This. Nothing is normal about occupation. Nothing normal about apartheid, ethnic cleansing, siege, blockade, Israeli-only roads, the bombing of water wells, schools, mosques, and UN buildings. Nothing normal about putting a civilian population on a diet, paying non-indigenous colonizers to occupy land that's already inhabited, rewriting the Nakba with each stolen childhood, trying to desensitize the bullet holes and claw marks put onto the bodies of Bassem Abu Rahme and Rachel Corey. No, I don't want to normalize with you. I don't want to have hug. I don't want coffee. Talk it out, break bread, sit around the campfire, eat s'mores and gush about how we're all the same. I don't want to share the stage, co-write a poem, submit to your anthology, talk about how art instead of justice can forge a better path. I don't want to indulge your amnesia about the glorious past, have a therapy session on two sides with equal grievances. The only thing barren is your moral capacity. Blooming a settler colonial state with appropriated culture. I will not fight for your privilege, nor will I seek to normalize it. Your dialogue group is a breeding group for injustice. Just look at the board members and the ZOA sponsorship. Zionism is the real demographic threat, infecting the minds of millions with racism. They were hooded in the South, pushing darker nations into Bantustans, jailing young men in edge blocks in Northern Ireland. In case you missed the hint, I don't want to pretend all is okay. That bombs dropped on Gaza don't have a manufacturer. The pilot doesn't have a nationality, or Shimon Peres is any better than Avigdor Lieberman. It's not just the occupation, stupid. It's the right of return, equality for all Palestinians. It's the transformation from an exclusivist, supremacist state to a nation for all its citizens. You deserve nothing more than equality, which means more than African refugees are provided in South Tel Aviv. You are the shining light on a settlement hill, reminding the world that racism often comes in nice packaging. We don't give the Sudan $3.4 billion a year in military aid, don't have preferential trade agreements with North Korea, don't call Iran a democracy. You are a proxy for empire, a 1950s ethnocracy trapped in 21st century clothing. Yes, Israel, you are singled out with aids, weapons, and UN vetoes in your favor. Did I hurt your feelings? Should we hug after the show? Do these words hurt more than the bombs dropped on Gaza? White phosphorus incinerating the insides of children. I'm not the bad guy. You are defending a bad system. Your words and actions have consequences. You are either with oppression or against it. I didn't write history and didn't choose for you to stand on the wrong side of it. Your system of injustice is coming to an end, and whether you recognize it or not, it will be liberating for you too. I'm going to be here with you until my battery expires. or the administration and security kicked me out. And if I missed it, I'm gonna try to follow up on the video. Thank you all for including me, and I'm very happy that you're participating. Um, I don't know if we're gonna have a free Palestine, but I'm not gonna stop uh, in the face of the Zionist wall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fadi. Those are the words everybody needs to hear today. I'm going to turn to Maha now.
Yeah.
Maha.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. And I'm happy to join for the first time in a Palestinian event. So my name is Maha Mahanna. I was born and raised in Gaza, and my family now is going through genocide and famine there. I've lost over 130 people in the past 7 months. I'm currently here in Winnipeg, pursuing a PhD degree in Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Manitoba, and I am in my 3rd year now. So for today, I selected to read 2 poems that speak to me. The first one was written by the well-known Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. Mahmoud Darwish was a respected and well-known Palestinian poet and author, and he was referred to as Palestine's national poet because he gave voice to Palestinian struggles. I'm sorry, I have to introduce him because Mahmoud Darwish is a symbol of Palestinian struggle as well. He was born in 1941, even before Israel's illegal settler colonial state was founded on stolen Palestinian land, and he died in 2008 after undergoing heart surgery. So his poem, the one I'm going to read today, is called Silence for Gaza. So he wrote, Gaza is far from its relatives and close to its enemies, because whenever Gaza explodes, it becomes an island and it never stops exploding. It scratched the enemy's face, broke his dreams, and stopped his satisfaction with time. Because in Gaza, time is something different. Because in Gaza, time is not a neutral element. It does not compel people to cool contemplation, but rather to explosion and a collision with reality. Time there doesn't take children from childhood to old age, but rather makes them men in their first confrontation with the enemy. Time in Gaza is not relaxation, but storming the burning noon, because in Gaza, values are different. The only value for the occupied is the extent of his resistance to occupation. That's the only competition there. Gaza has been addicted to knowing this cruel, noble value. It didn't learn it from books, hasty school seminars, loud propaganda, megaphones, or songs. It learned it through experience alone and through work that's not done for advertisement and image. Gaza has no throat. Its pores are the ones that speak in sweat, blood, and fires. Hence, the enemy hates it to death and fears it to criminality and tries to sink it into the sea, the desert, or blood. And hence, its relatives and friends love it with a coyness that amounts to jealousy and fear at times. Because Gaza is the brutal lesson and the shining example for enemies and friends alike. Gaza is not the most beautiful city. Its shores is not bluer than the shores of Arab cities. Its oranges are not the most beautiful in the Mediterranean basin. Gaza is not the richest city. It's not the most elegant or the biggest, but it equals the history of an entire homeland, because it is more ugly, improvised, miserable, and vicious in the eyes of enemies, because it is the most capable among us of disturbing the enemy's mood and his comfort, because it is his nightmare, because its mind oranges children without a childhood, old men without old age, and women without desires. Because of all this, it is the most beautiful, the purest, the richest among us, and the one most worthy of love. We do injustice to Gaza when we look for its poems, so let us not disfigure Gaza's beauty. What's most beautiful in it is that it is devoid of poetry at a time when we try to triumph over the enemy with poems. So we believed ourselves and we were overjoyed to see the enemy letting us sing. We let them triumph. Then we dried our lips of poems. We saw that the enemy had finished building cities, forts, and streets. We do injustice to Gaza when we turn it into a myth, because we will hate it when we discover that it's no more than a small, poor city that resists. We do injustice when we wonder what made it into a myth. If we had dignity, we would break all our mirrors and cry or curse it. If we refuse to revolt against ourselves, we do injustice to Gaza if we glorify it, because being enchanted by it will take us to the edge of waiting, and Gaza doesn't come to us. Gaza doesn't liberate us. Gaza has no horses, airplanes, magic wands, or offices in capital cities. Gaza liberates itself from our attributes and liberates our language from its Gazas at the same time. When we meet it in a dream, perhaps it won't recognize us, because Gaza was born out of fire, while we were born out of waiting and crying over abandoned homes. It is true that Gaza has its special circumstances and its own revolutionary traditions, but its secret is not a mystery. Its resistance is popular and firmly joined together and knows that it knows what it wants. It wants to expel the enemy out of its clothes. The relationship of resistance to the people is that of skin to bones, not a teacher to a student. Resistance in Gaza did not turn it into a profession or an institution. It did not accept anyone's tutelage and did not leave its fate hinging on anyone's signature or stamp. It does not care that much if we know its name, picture, or eloquence. It did not believe that it was a material for media. It did not prepare for cameras and did not put smiling paste on its face. Neither does it want that, nor we. Hence, Gaza is bad business for merchants, and hence it is an incomparable moral treasure for Arabs. What's beautiful about Gaza is that our voices do not reach it. Nothing distracts it. Nothing takes its fist away from the enemy's face. Not the forms of the Palestinian state we will establish, whether on the eastern side of the moon or the eastern side of Mars when it is explored. Gaza is devoted to rejection, hunger and rejection, thirst and rejection, displacement and rejection, torture and rejection, siege and rejection, death and rejection. Enemies might triumph over Gaza. The storming sea might triumph over an island. They might chop down all its trees. They might break its bones. They might implant tanks on the insides of its children and women. They might throw it into the sea, sand, or blood. But it will not repeat lies and say yes to invaders. It will continue to explode. It is neither death nor suicide. It is Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live. It will continue to explode. It is neither death nor suicide. It is Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live. Thank you. So that was the first one, and to give credit to the translator, because the poem was originally written in Arabic. It was translated by Sinan Anton. So the second one is a short one, and I believe like most people heard about it. It's a poem called If I Must Die by Rifat al-Arayr. Rifat al-Arayr was a Palestinian writer, translator, and university professor. He was murdered along with some family members in December 2023 during this genocidal war in Gaza. And he's the co-founder of We Are Not Numbers. It's an organization. It's mainly a storytelling project as a means of resistance against the Palestinian occupation. I also want to mention that almost 2 weeks ago, they killed his daughter, her husband, and their 3-month-old baby. And Rifat hasn't had the chance even to meet his first grandson. So the poem reads as follows. So if I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that that child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who lived in a place and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. Thank you.
Thank you, Maha. That was very beautiful. And thank you for being here. And all our thoughts are with you and with all your family today and every day. So, Kai, you can go next.
Anin bonjour. Hi, everybody. My name is Kai Pyle, Kai Minosh Pyle. I am a Métis and Anishinaabe writer, and I'm speaking to you today from Dajob, which is Ho-Chunk territory known colonially as Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm just going to read two short poems, one by myself, and then also I did a translation of Rafat al-Rayer's poem, If I Must Die, into Ojibwe. So I am not a fluent speaker of my language. I am a learner who has been learning for probably almost a decade now, but it's not my first language, so I apologize if there are any errors. So the first poem is one of my own. I wrote it during the 2020 I was living in Minneapolis, so I was witnessing the uprisings of the Black Lives Matter uprisings, as well as the onset of the COVID pandemic. So that is just like a little context. And it's got a lot more meaning in the Anishinaabe one, so I'm going to read it first in Ojibwe, and then I'll read the English translation. Ando baneda ni kan, mi ga nangwa magade ni mangwa, mejido do nangwa. No ginadanig, bagda swadanig, jimajimashkiki we kewad, uma king. Zubo danda, bichiboin, ejamini wigmak, aki, weweni dash, nana itoda. So it's a little bit of a war cry. Let us war, comrade, let us fight against those who think us enemies, who do us wrong. Let us stop them now. Let us not allow their bad medicine on this land. Let us suck out the poison of this infected world. Let us heal it gently. And then the next poem I'm going to read is Gishben Niboyan, If I Must Die. Gishben Niboyan, Ginawa Boj Jipamadisieg, Jitabaj Mieg, Jadawa Gayeg and Daiman, Jadawa Yeg, Bapakiwayanigan, Minwa Bimina Kwanes, Wayabish Gagwag, Genwabi Gakaye, Mijawab and Dang Beja Kapanuji, Ingoje Magazang, Megwawab and Dangijagong, Babi Ado Dedeyan, Gamajanid, Apipiscanenig. We know Ekidonid, we Majanid, Gawin Oia, Wigiki Kendagwad, Gawin Winago, Wigiki Kendazin. Jawab and Dang Apenoji, Umbasajagan, Indombasajagan, Gaojituyeg, Ishpeming Papamiseg, Wajene Nemad Ajina Ajeni Nayanid, Jebitunid Zak Edwin, Gishpin the Boyan, Manoing Gapiton Bagosen the Moen, Mando the Awan, the Bajimoen. And then the last poem that I'm going to read is a real short one that is by M. Carmen Lane, who is a Mohawk, Tuscarora, and African-American poet and organizer who I had the opportunity to meet. And their poem is titled Just a Bit of History Repeating. So this is the book. Dominican Republic, Haiti, Hispaniola, ground zero for occupation, root of colonization, chunk of Turtle Island, beloved whole, land of high mountains, Haiti, again, again. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. That was beautiful. Kareem, can you come next? Thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, so my name is Karim Wafa. I'm also known as Karim Wafa Al-Husseini. I'm an indigenous Palestinian poet, historian, lecturer, writer, and speaker. Today I have planned to read 2 long-form poems and a couple of short-form poems. I tend to write poetry either long or short. Short ones are a couple of verses, and long ones are just a page or 2. So I'm going to start by reading one long one, a couple of short ones, and one long one, and to alternate. So the first one is called Elders, Settler Colonialism, Oppression, and Freedom. Look at me, and what do you see? A mere brown Palestinian indigenous man, correct, but is that the way that it's supposed to be? I come from a long line of anti-colonial freedom fighters, but none of that matters now, as our land is filled with haters. My elders were living peacefully when suddenly there was a change in reality. From good to bad, they had to flee in the black of night and seek refuge in a hopeless plight that tries to promote a sense of hopeful emancipation when our brothers and sisters have sided along with oppression. I cannot fathom the horrors my people had to go through for one person to come and tell me that's not enough. I know that because of the way that I look and the language I speak and where I come from, every verse of rebellion I say by the world is heard as a squeak. They all try to be our friends and side with us when we cry, but as soon as we turn our backs, they want to swat us like a fly. This world has never sided with any type of indigenous people. From the arid plains of Arabia, the Levant, North Africa, to the islands of the Caribbean, Turtle Island, the Pacific, Australasia, and Aotearoa, indigenous identity has been replaced by a settler colonial reality. How dare you, the oppressor, after having kicked me away from my own homeland, speak to me and paint a beautiful picture of your home, which is actually mine, and say that it should be on my travel bucket list because now it is developed. Who the heck do you think you are, excuse my French, to act in a matter of utmost hypocrisy? No, I'm not going to stay quiet because this is now my lived reality. Just like everything you've done to my ancestors is done to me. I will not stay down. I will not keep shut. I will speak with all the life the world has given me to fill. I will speak for my elders, the ones that you did all that you could to destroy and kill. While what matters to you might be eating takeout, relaxing, and watching Netflix, always remember that the ways of our elders follow us like a fix. Yes, I remember. I know I won't forget. We might not even forgive. We don't owe you anything. We know our worth. If anybody owes anybody else anything, you owe us a return ticket back home, while the same must be done to you. Look at me. Yes, the world may not care about me because of the way that I look or the language I speak, but the history I tell cannot be contained in a book. It must be told, it must be spoken, for the spirits of my elders must be awoken. You have done your best to bury us, but you did not know that we were seeds, so we sprung up from the ground faster that you could conceal your evil deeds. I can hear my grandma's words saying, I want to go home. But our future is not yet permanently set into stone. The villages they built and the lands they cultivated, all destroyed by the oppressor because the truth is what he hated. The audacity to walk unapologetically on the graves of my elders that you destroyed and pillaged. Am I supposed to smile when I run into you? Because what I want to do is worse than you could ever imagine. The spirits of my ancestors and the souls of my elders have not disappeared. They've come back stronger in me. Yes, there's nothing that you can do because each generation comes back stronger, don't you see? You've tried to corrupt us into straying from our ancient ways, but let me tell you, there is one thing that is coming to an end. It's your own days, because the earth knows who is worthy and who is not, because the earth knows who's original and who's not, because the earth knows who deserves it and who does not. So while tomorrow you may forget about what I just said here today, my ancestors don't, and they hear every single word that I say. The generational curses they have inflicted onto my people can never be undone. We must organize and unite until one day we will be one, but until that day comes, I will speak for my elders who have been silenced. I may be the only one, but at least I have not forgotten what has happened. To look for consolation, I turn to history, but then I remember there's the oppressor who writes history. So I'm not present and the only subject that makes me feel like I can talk. I'm pushed to the side, called extreme, and told to walk, so I do not matter. And my people's stories aren't told because we're seen as unimportant and ancient and old, but how little you forget that the ancient ways are the ones that come back stronger. The newer generation will have the soul of its forgotten elder. While society destroys itself along the lines of its decadent ways, I won't forget. I will remember history's horrendous days with all of the oppression, colonialism, pillage, destruction, horror, trauma, generational curses, and evil. How can you even ask me if I am fine? Frowned upon for speaking my own language in the oppressor's home when I was forced to speak his and mine. Not today. I will shout from the mountain tops in my native tongue, Nirja, which means we will return. And forever remember that yes, you may have changed history and genocided our people, but the society you built on our holy ancestral land will one day burn. Thank you. So that's the first one, called Elders, Settler Colonialism, Oppression and Freedom. I'm just gonna read a couple of short ones and then the other long one. They ignore the suffering of millions, saying they don't understand it, but I ask them, in what language does the child cry? So that was the first one. The second one is, I remember the voices of the children from my village. So pure and angelic they were. Now they are with the angels, and they have even turned into them, taken from this world, far too soon. The third one is called Dear Homeland of My Ancestors. Dear homeland of my ancestors, I miss you. It's been a long time since we spoke. My grandma always tells me stories about how your air is the cleanest, your waters are the freshest, and your people are the nicest. I no longer know what to say. You've been betrayed by the world, and what's worse is that they blame you for suffering. They want you to stay quiet and never speak. Time will reveal their true colors. In the end, I know we will be victorious, and I'll be able to place my hand on your soil, kiss the graves of my elders, and bow down to the holy shrine of the blessed city. But until that day comes, I'm still a lost soul in exile, betrayed by the world, just like you. And now the other long poem that I'm going to read is called Child of Ancestral Spirits. I am the child of ancestral spirits, birthed on a land of destruction, but things were not always this way. My people were one with nature, the descendants of trees and rivers, even the mountains and streams. But things quickly changed when armies of light-skinned men coming from icy cold northern lands set foot on our native shores, planted a flag, and it's a story we know again. They said they discovered it. Discovered? Discovered what? We watched you invade and preach to your Lord, saying that you arrived to save the barbarians from the darkness of uncivilized ways, and I was yours now. But let me tell you, when I walk on the land, I can hear the gentle chirping of birds, accompanied by the distant whispers that come from nowhere and everywhere. When the colonizer walks on the land, there are no chirping birds or even distant whispers, because nature senses the evilness of his ways, so it turns around and hides. The whispers grow silent, praying that the darkness will swallow them whole and never brought to life again. When I look up at midnight, I can see the shimmering lights of the glimmering stars in the night sky. They are the souls of our ancient elders waving hello from the distant heavens. When the colonizer looks up at midnight, he doesn't pay attention to the stars. He smiles as the gray fumes from the bombs he dropped on my land cloud the sky, even in the depths of darkness. When I walk to the river and put my hand in the stream, a swarm of fish turn around in circles, gently dancing as if guided by the souls of water spirits famed in our mythical legends. When the colonizer walks to the river and puts his hand in the stream, it barely takes a second for all the fish to die, poisoned by his sweat, contaminated by the spilled blood of the people who cared for these fish. When I put my hand in the earth, I can feel the roots of centuries-old trees running to greet me with a warm embrace. When the colonizer puts his hand in the earth, who are we kidding? The colonizer doesn't put his hand in the earth. He doesn't even go near it. He's too busy developing, or should I say, destroying. We are not the same. The sounds of my voice echo the centuries-old tribal seized elders, the same elders who told me to always welcome guests with open arms. If only we had closed our arms when the colonizer arrived and had not listened to our elders' advice just this once, because nothing has ever been the same since. We've had our language and culture, our land and heritage, our people and history all taken and destroyed. reduced to the mere sidelines of a jolly post-colonial history. I am more than what you have been told. My people are ancient, timeless in fact, descendants of the oldest bodies to ever walk on the earth. We are the manifestation of life. Thank you. And I just have two tiny ones to end with. This one is inspired directly by the invasion of Rafah of a couple of days ago, and it's called Rafah. Rafah, they started the invasion of a land that was never theirs, and they pillaged and destroyed while the world did nothing but watch. We lived on the land for thousands of years before the colonizer ever discovered it. And the last one, just a couple of words. They tried to erase us, but suddenly the whole world became us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's very hard to find the right words, but thank you. I want to just remind everybody that today's event is also an attempt to gather funds for Care for Gaza. So if anybody, is able to spare anything, please send funds in that direction. If anybody has a fundraiser for family in Gaza, please put it in the chat and let's do all we can to get funds. I know Maha has been trying to raise funds for her family before the Rafah entrance was closed this week. And please share in your networks. Please push everybody you can to donate to Care for Gaza or any of the fundraisers that people might put in the chat here now for people who are trying to survive the Rafah invasion at this very moment as we speak. Okay, we'll move now to a recorded contribution from Ladan Osman, which we are incredibly grateful for. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ladan Usman. Thank you so much for supporting this fundraiser. Thank you to the Early Caribbean Society and to Carrie for organizing it and for inviting me to participate. I'm going to read 3 poems for you. The first is called Landscape Genocide. My mother walked Lila Beach every morning when pregnant. I know the mineral scent of salt water wherever I am. If the sun bakes the metal of earth, if my own damp scalp sweats, if I hold my henna'd palms to my face, I have said God, there is no God but God into my metallic palms. When my blood started, war started. Ever since the war started, I dye a henna disc on each palm. I refresh it when it browns. Old blood, God, into my mineral palms when the whole street was white sheets. Thin men digging graves night till dawn, till night till dawn. They paused for every single prayer. An orb of light dragged me through a dim street, lifted me off my feet. I shouted, "This is my light," and held it tight against my belly. I was still. Beyond known stillness, a gravity of my own, and still I didn't light the street. The last thing my mother promised me was a photo of her, 5 months pregnant, at the shore, backlit by the ocean. Go at dawn, she'd say. The water was warmest at dawn. Girls went to the beach in whatever they were wearing, even if they had school later. Their mothers couldn't keep them from the water, from walking fully dressed into it. There was nowhere to go but Lilo. The orb, a giant marble in my diaphragm, would float with me there. There was nowhere to go but into the ocean. Between this interior desert and the edge of my known world, orange Bacot tinted sand, marked with the heels and balls of firm and dazed feet. Charred acacias face down in the dust. Succulents marking clusters of graves of people and fruit-bearing trees. Bones of tall livestock. The startling domes of camel ribs lit like a great hall by the relentless sun. There is nowhere to go but the ocean. Between here and its mineral scent, bones of people, small and not small, bush lions and their young, always litters of bones at the edge between known and wild worlds, between here and Lido, the land in full prostration, the only song, metallic, shells, or whole bullets underfoot, sometimes whole piles at the edges and centers of towns put face down at night, at dawn, during afternoon prayer, at dusk, between here and Lido, the land and everything in it in full submission to the mineral scent of our water and blood and inability to cry anything, not even God, no God but God, we go at dawn. This next poem is called Parable for Refugees. 17 common flies, clustered, hallway, days. They no longer fly through the screen when ushered, weak, to, from, light, real, artificial. Did they forget the sun? Fly toward faces, some dead on a sill, some walk. Did they forget how to fly? Why don't they go? One paces on a step. Do they wait for a shoe? It averts them, goes. Why die still? Is it madness? The ones who wait. I am recording this kind of late in this dramatic and beautiful inn in Pittsburgh, where it is raining. And they say that the gates of heaven are open when it's raining. And so I send up a prayer for the Palestinian people everywhere, for a total, a thorough, a lasting justice, one that teaches us what justice is, justice that goes beyond our imagination at this time. And I hope that that prayer is answered. And in the meantime, we resist in support of our brethren and alongside of them. Thank you for sharing some digital time with me and with all the other readers. Water. I came to you carrying water. I came to you carrying silted water from a well, muddied, carried in a bucket with a split lip. My water tasted salty and like the earth, and so like blood, and I brought as much as I could carry in a bucket that drooled tiny streams of water on my mud-ashen legs. In all our days together, I have walked between well and house enough so the path is marked with the branching roads of my souls. I have come to you so often. The path has many other roads, if only you kneel in the dust and look for them. I am subject to you in the way the water is subject to the moon. You are subject to me in the way a wall is subject to its roof. And like the water, I expect you to come upon me of a sudden, like flesh out of a slit in cloth. And like the wall, you expect intimate collapses, capillaries of change inscribed day by day on our surfaces. I came to you with water from my deep well. I came to you with earth for your ready water. Water in every crevice for the valley that divides your tongue. I held your head in my lap and traveled the many roads leading out of that valley. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Laden Osman for those beautiful poems and readings, and for her prayers for Palestine and Sudan and Congo today. I'm going to read next, and I have put the poems in the chat. One of the poems is offered to us by Otonia Okotbitek, who is a poet here in Canada, from originally from Kenya, but raised in Uganda. I'll read that at the end of the 3 short poems I'm going to read. But she couldn't be here herself, so we're very grateful for her poem sharing today. The first poem I'm going to read is by Muhammad Al-Kurd, who is an internationally touring and award-winning poet, writer, and journalist, and originally from occupied Jerusalem and occupied Palestine. Tonight we die as a family. At the hospital, the nurses startled a surprise visitor, her husband's corpse on a stretcher. He arrived in the back seat of a taxi, a makeshift hearse. There are not enough ambulances in Gaza and more than enough death. She is livid. Men never listen. I told you, wait till after my shift. I need to tend to the wounded first. I told you tonight we die as a family. We were supposed to die as a family. The second poem is by a 16-year-old, Amani El-Rageb, who was martyred in Gaza on October the 13th, 2023. It was translated by her cousin, Aya Sakura, who says that Amani read this poem at a commemoration of Land Day at Al-Quds Open University in Khan Yunis on March the 30th, 2022. You've burned the sheik's field worth a lifetime of planting and fed him a variety of jail cells instead. My homes you've demolished in the school's vicinity, bewildered. The sheik's son sought a field to live cultivating, only narrow alleyways between varieties of jail cells. You've demolished my homes in your hubris, and you've demanded my rights, you occupier, you rapist. But which fire will keep me from what is mine? I will carry the blood of martyrs around my neck. O mother, rise up and meet me. Like fires in the mouths of volcanoes, we have the scalding blossoms of blood to scatter. O mother, the bond of blood is what binds us. Do not fear the bullets of sultans. The final poem is by Otonia J. Okotbitek. I often teach Julie's poetry collection called 100 Days, which you might be familiar with, which she wrote a poem every day for the 100 days of the Rwanda genocide. And so she's written this poem today, or this time round. If we're still counting days, if we're still counting days, it is day 182. Or day whatever it is today since we started counting numbers. Like steps, like ladders to nowhere. Headlines pour out the sides of the computer screen. I catch them and collect the spilt words like milk in a clear vase on a coffee table in the living room at home. Words like heated rays out from the screen, and the sky every day, the sky every single day, mostly blue, mostly bright blue, deep blue, sometimes clouded over. I'm sure there was a night sky that wanted to be there too, but day 66 from 100 days arrives. The boy I was thinking about in that poem dissolves out of the page, as if he hadn't been a person, just here, just now. Boom. Boom. A blank page. And that war, that war, that war, that war, that I'm thinking about. Boom. Boom. Which is not the 1994 genocide of Rwanda. Boom, boom, as the young man reappear and walk among the rubble and look at me directly and say, now what? Now what? Now what is your responsibility to us? Thank you. And Trey Vontor joining us from England. I'm not sure exactly which part of England. Are you in Northamptonshire? But Trey's going to read for us next.
Hi. Yeah, I'm going to read. I'm based in Northampton, and it's a town in England. So I want to read three poems. Two of them are by me, and one by the Palestinian American poet Noor Hindi. So the first poem is called "God Save the People," and it's after a poem called Decentering Whiteness by an American poet called Darius Simpson. So it goes like this. The saying goes, Black Lives Matter. Saying goes, Free Palestine. The saying goes, celebrate the Queen's Jubilee. Let's talk about how every monarch between Elizabeth I in the 1550s and William IV in the 1830s gave their blessing to the human trafficking of Africans. What happened when we called them monarchs rather than colonizers? Let's talk about historical amnesia, how in 2020 organizations who had made anti-racism statements are now supporting an institution that steals from you, how the same organizations challenged colonial statues. I want to talk about British traditions. It's just peer pressure from the white supremacist institutions. Do you see how easy it is to erase institutional wrongdoing and to individualize wrongdoing? For example, you say slavery, I say enslavement. You say triangular, I say Trafalgar Square. And immediately you start to think about where the money went. And if you follow the trail of modern insurance, you'll see the Atlantic Ocean as over 40,000 miles of unmarked graves, as coronations sit adjacent to history's depraved. What happens when you call enslavement human trafficking, the Royal Africa Company a corporation? What happens when you call British traditionalism genocide? You say Edward Colston, you say enslaver, and immediately you think of his statue, not the fact it was put 150 years after he died, as British stately homes run red, next to the human bodies below the deck. Immediately you stop individualizing my critique and you start to ask questions about institutional violence, abracadabra. The racial contract has moved into the present. What happens when you trade the coronation for Thanksgiving and Plymouth Rock lands on the black country of minority nation? What happens when we call the Jubilee a white nationalist rally, a rally, a lynching a long back holiday weekend? Do you see how violence gets erased from my history books in the creases of a white woman's smile? Do you see white women lynching black men and then wearing their faces on EDI working groups? What happens to the next protesters that pull down the statue when mobs of football fans are celebrating the Platinum Jubilee, even though celebrating oppression is the most un-English or British thing ever? In the aftermath of the Chartists and Blair Peach, why do we call it a Jubilee rather than 70 years colonized? What happens when we call it racism rather than white supremacy? An invitation to the palace rather than demise in first class? Honors rather than Stockholm syndrome? What happens when terms like police abolition are more controversial than 150,000 plus preventable COVID deaths? Less about equal access to unjust systems, more about why unjust systems exist. But to call your organization anti-racist or celebrating the monarchy, I ask you to question the white supremacy you've digested without thinking, why British tradition keeps it colonial, with the crown's blood splatter, bankrolling bank holidays, with the blood of your ancestors on it. And I wrote that poem during the the media circus around the Queen's Jubilee. This next poem is called Fuck Your Craft, My People Are Dying by Noor Hindi, who's a Palestinian American poet and reporter. So it goes like this. Colonizers write about flowers. I tell you about children throwing rocks at Israeli tanks seconds before becoming daisies. I want to be like those poets who care about the moon. Palestinians don't see the moon from jail cells and prisons. It's so beautiful, the moon. They're so beautiful. The flowers. I pick flowers for my dead father when I'm sad. He watches Al Jazeera all day. I wish Jessica would stop texting me Happy Ramadan. I know I'm American because when I walk into a room, something dies. Metaphors about death are for poets who think ghosts care about sound. When I die, I promise to haunt you forever. One day, I'll write about flowers like we own them. And the next poem is one called Internal Affairs, and I wrote it basically based off the last poem, and I wrote that poem back in 2021 because there was Palestine protests all through London in that summer as well in 2021. That's when I wrote this last poem. So it's called Internal Affairs after Noor Hindi. My degree was a gentleman's club of dead poets. Tattooed trees planted by the corpsed hands of the firm pit the younger and pit the elder. And England gassed by the Etonian variant. I wanted to pen incantations on #MeToo and BLM, but we were forced to write about stems and rosebuds. So naturally, I wrote of 400 years in verse and line breaks that bloomed claret, not the sustained incandescence of the Mayflower in big 2021. But Black Britain looks cross-eyed at the British Museum. Despite the asylum-like white walls, 180,000 Londoners marched for a free Palestine. Israel as an illegal nation state that rose out of the state of this nation, Winston Churchill raised at half-mast out of the fog of war. Israeli tanks move like cockroaches in the spectral flame of Blighty. I wish I could write poetry for amusement. You know about how dead white men write about York roses and their love of nation states. I know I live in Britain because when I watch the genocide in Gaza, the £5 note in my pocket explodes where the sun never sets. My lecturer asked me to write about flowers, so I write about the petals on the Gaza Strip, the stacks of winter roses outside Grenfell, whose heads open and close like grenades, little footballs in the orange sunset. I hate talking in metaphors. Black Lives Matter, Free Palestine, Tax the Rich. Martin, Malcolm, and Angela all spoke out against the illegal occupation. So let's send roses to Downing Street in dissent. Perhaps Boris will smell the flowers for Lent. One day, I will write about flowers. How about that, petal? Thanks very much.
That was wonderful. Thanks so much, Trey, for joining us from the heart of Empire. And I think Desha is next.
Thank you. I'm also seated at the heart of Empire at the moment. I'm speaking to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. And I'm going to read 3 poems. The first by someone who you all might be familiar with, June Jordan. She's the incomparable Jamaican-American poet. And in September 1982, there was a massacre at a refugee camp outside of Lebanon, the camps of Sabra and Shatila. And after reading an article about this in the New York Times, in which she's excerpted this quote by a woman saying, "Where is Abu Fadi?" she wailed. "Who will bring me my loved one?" She wrote this poem called Moving Towards Home. I do not wish to speak about the bulldozer and the red dirt, not quite covering all of the arms and legs. Nor do I wish to speak about the night-long screams that reached the observation posts where soldiers lounged about. Nor do I wish to speak about the woman who shoved her baby into the stranger's hands before she was led away. Nor do I wish to speak about the father whose sons were shot through the head while they slit his own throat before the eyes of his wife. Nor do I wish to speak about the army that lit continuous flares into the darkness so that the others could see the backs of their victims lined against the wall. Nor do I wish to speak about the piled up bodies and the stench that will not float. Nor do I wish to speak about the nurse again and again raped before they murdered her on the hospital floor. Nor do I wish to speak about the rattling bullets that did not halt on that keening trajectory. Nor do I wish to speak about the pounding on the doors and the breaking of windows and the hauling of families into the world of the dead. I do not wish to speak about the bulldozer and the red dirt, not quite covering all the arms and legs, because I do not wish to speak about unspeakable events that must follow from those who dare to purify people, those who dare to exterminate a people, those who dare to describe human beings as beasts with two legs, those who dare to mop up, to tighten the noose, to step up the military pressure, to ring around civilian streets with tanks, those who dare to close the universities, to abolish the press, to kill the elected representatives of the people who refuse to be purified, those who are the ones from whom we must redeem the words of our beginning. Because I need to speak about home. I need to speak about living room, where the land is not bullied and beaten to a tombstone. I need to speak about living room, where the talk will take place in my language. I need to speak about living room, where my children will grow without horror. I need to speak about living room, where the men of my family between the ages of 6 and 65 are not marched into a roundup that leads to the grave. I need to talk about living room, where I can sit without grief, without wailing aloud for my loved ones, where I must not ask, where is Abu Fadi? Because he will be there beside me. I need to talk about living room because I need to talk about home. I was born a Black woman, and now I am become a Palestinian. Against the relentless laughter of evil, there is less and less living room. And where are my loved ones? It is time to make our way home. The second and third poems I'm going to read are from another well-known Caribbean poet from Haiti. Her name is Kathleen Mars. She's also a novelist. Some of you might have read her translated novel, Je suis vivant, which was published in 2015. I'm going to read her poem, My Hand and the Stone, and Behind the Door. Both were translated by Alexander Bess, and I think there's a link in the chat. Also translation. I'll be reading the French. Sorry, I'll be reading the English translation, but you can also access the French version. My hand and the stone, sage rebellion of noble particles gripped in my palm. I've made my own her reality, gray, heavy, oval. Millennial stone, whose cry lays claim to nothing other than a defiance of oblivion. Behind the door. Sweet sentinel, you keep watch over the shadows of my room. This evening, my dreams depart for the north, toward the sea. Gentle candle, gentle flame, under your tears of light, wood, stone, copper, and grass and glass, cloaked in golden silence, bathed in the same mystery. Thank you.
Daisha, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Chibo is next.
All right, great. My name is Chibo Anyaduba, and I am a faculty member in the English department at the University of Winnipeg, Canada. Speaking to you from Winnipeg, but I'm from Nigeria, both colonial contraptions. I want to first thank the Early Caribbean Society for organizing this event and inviting me to share some poems with you. Today, I am here in solidarity with Palestinians and other oppressed peoples who continue to fight for their fundamental right to liberation, the very basic. I'll be reading two poems. The first one is a three-part poem that I wrote several years ago when confronted by different episodes of the catastrophes of empire brought upon colonized peoples. The first poem is called Words Fail, because words indeed fail. And when words fail, I think that's when poetry begins for me. I'll put the text of the poems I'm going to read in the chat. Words fail. 1. Plowed up from the mass graves of history, exhibits on the pyre of empty testaments, equestrians of trauma, signifiers of endless suffering, icons of silence, of the never speech. To you, mangled, rancid dead on display, I owe this bewildering enchantment. That corpse, lying along history's highway, rotten, unattended, unmourned, crushed beyond recognition, its decay attracting cluttered faces, is now sprouting flowers, lilies mingling with wild cacti, unbruised, gazing up at the clouds, daring the burnishing rays to crush them once again. 3. I am a captive of my own cries, held behind the bars of choked agonies, a dead tongue from subglottic stenosis, diseased words clogging my throat. To speak is to suffocate with words. Still I must speak and choke. I would like to conclude with a revolutionary anti-colonial poem by the West African poet David Mandesi Diop titled Certitude. The poem expresses my unwavering belief in the imperative of revolution and the inescapable defeat of the colonizer by the oppressed, colonized peoples of the world. I believe that no colonial empire can endure indefinitely, and the current empire we find ourselves in is no exception. And may its demise arrive sooner rather than later. I will also share the text of this poem because I took the translation from a slightly different source from the link shared earlier. Certitude. To those who fatten themselves on butchery and measure the stages of their reign by corpses, to them I say that days and men, that the sun and the stars are shaping out the rhythmic brotherhood of all people. To them I say that the heart and the head are joined together in the battle line, and there is not a single day when somewhere summer fails to come to life. To them I say that storms of manly force will crush all the panderers of patience, and that one day the seasons we see newly forming the enactment of triumphant exploits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chibo. I think Arzu has joined us now, actually, and she was earlier up. So, Sadim, you go after Arzu if that's okay. I'll ask Arzu to go next and then Sadim. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's absolutely fine.
Thank
Hi,
you so much.
everyone. I'm so sorry to come a little late. I'm at the U of T encampments at the moment, and there's a lot happening. But I am Arzu Singh. I am a faculty member at the Women and Gender Studies Department at the University of Winnipeg. I'm joining you from Takaranto, which operates on the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And today I will be reading two poems with you. The first poem I am going to read comes from Musab Abu Taha, who called "Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear," which he writes about his life under siege in Gaza. So this is his poem. When you open my ear, touch it gently. My mother's voice lingers somewhere inside. Her voice is the echo that helps recover my equilibrium when I feel dizzy during my attentiveness. You may encounter songs in Arabic, poems in English I recite to myself, or a song I chant to the chirping birds in our backyard. When you stitch the cut, don't forget to put all these back in my ear. Put them back in order as you would do with books on your shelf. The drone is buzzing sound, the roar of an F-16, the screams of bombs falling on houses, on fields, and on bodies, of rockets flying away, rid my small ear canal of them all. Spray the perfume of your smiles on the incision, inject the song of life into my veins to wake me up. Gently beat the drum so my mind may dance with yours, my doctor, day and night. And the second poem I am going to read is by Hiba Abu Nada, who was martyred on October 20th by an Israeli airstrike. And she wrote this piece as one of her last pieces that she composed, and it's translated by Huda Fakhruddin, and it is called I Grant You Refuge. 1. I grant you refuge in evocation and prayer. I bless the neighborhood and the minaret to guard them from the rocket. From the moment it is a general's command until it becomes a raid. I grant you and the little ones refuge, the little ones who change the rocket's course before it lands with their smiles. 2. I grant you and the little ones refuge, the little ones now asleep like chicks in a nest. They don't walk in their sleeps towards dreams. They know death lurks outside the house. Their mother's tears are now doves following them, trailing behind every coffin. 3. I grant the father refuge, the little one's father who holds the house upright when it tilts after the bombs. He implores the moment of death. Have mercy, spare me a little while. For their sake, I've learned to love my life. Grant them a death as beautiful as they are. 4. I grant you refuge from hurt and death, refuge in the glory of our siege here in the belly of the whale. Our streets exalt God with every bomb. They pray for the mosques and the houses. And every time the bombing begins in the north, our supplications rise in the south. 5. I grant you refuge from hurt and suffering. With words of sacred scripture, I shield the oranges from the sting of phosphorus and the shades of cloud from the smog. I grant you refuge in knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fell in love and died together will one day laugh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Arzu. Thanks for joining us and sending you solidarity from here. Sadim is next.
Hi, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you for organizing this, and thank you to everybody who's read. This is really it's really heartening to see for those of us who might not have any encampments or anything. It's just nice to see all of this solidarity. I'm reading two poems today. One of them is slightly less in the spirit of resistance, but it's very powerful. And I thought it kind of captures what's going on over there in Palestine and Gaza and Rafah. And the other one slightly more hopeful. So the first one is called Running Orders by Lina Khalaf Tufaha. Here it goes. They call us now before they drop the bombs. The phone rings and someone who knows my first name calls and says in perfect Arabic, "This is David." And in my stupor of sonic booms and glass-shattering symphonies still smashing around in my head, I think, do I know any Davids in Gaza? They call us now to say, run. You have 58 seconds from the end of this message. Your house is next. They think of it as some kind of wartime courtesy. Doesn't matter that there is nowhere to run to. It means nothing that the borders are closed and your papers are worthless and mark you only for a life sentence in this prison by the sea, and the alleyways are narrow and there are more human lives packed one against the other, more than any other place on earth. Just run. We aren't trying to kill you. It doesn't matter that you can't call us back to tell us the people we claim to want aren't in your house, that there's no one here except you and your children who are cheering for Argentina, sharing the last loaf of bread for this week, counting candles left in case the power goes out. It doesn't matter that you have children. You live in the wrong place. And now is your chance to run to nowhere. It doesn't matter that 58 seconds isn't long enough to find your wedding album or your son's favorite blanket and your daughter's almost completed college application or your shoes or to gather everyone in the house. It doesn't matter what you had planned. It doesn't matter who you are. Prove you're human. Prove you stand on two legs. Run. The second poem is called Born on Nakba Day, and it's by Muhammad al-Kurd. It's from his poetry collection called Rifqa. Your unkindness rewrote my autobiography into punchlines and guts, blades for tongues, a mouth pregnant with thunder. Your unkindness told me to push through. Look, listen. I was born on the 50th anniversary of the Nakba to a mother who reaped olives and figs and other Quranic verses. Wattini wa zaytun. My name, a bomb in a white room, a walking suspicion in an airport, choiceless politics. I was born on the 50th anniversary of the Nakba outside the hospital room. Outside the hospital room, protests, burnt rubber, kafayed faces and bare bodies, stones thrown onto tanks, tanks imprinted with US flags, lands smelling of tear gas, skies tiled with rubber-coated bullets, a few bodies shot, dead, died numbers in a headline. I and my sister were born. Birth lasts longer than death. In Palestine, death is sudden, instant, constant, happens in between breaths. I was born among poetry on the 50th anniversary. The liberation chants outside the hospital room told my mother to push. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Every single word everybody is speaking just seems so apt and so important. So thank you very much. Miriam is next. And thanks again to everybody who's joining us. We're so grateful.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Buhanda. I'm residing in the ancestral lands of Yanaguana, now San Antonio. And thank you, Early Caribbean Society. And thank you, Carrie, for the Arab Lit website. I am reading from two Palestine poets. The first poem is Our Loneliness by Hiba Abu Nada, translated by Salma Harland. How alone it was, our loneliness, when they won their wars. Only you were left behind, naked, before this loneliness. Darwish, no poetry could ever bring it back, but the lonely one has lost. It's another age of ignorance, our loneliness. Damned be that which divided us, then stands united at your funeral. Now your land is auctioned, and the world's a free market. It's a barbaric era, our loneliness, one when none will stand up for us. So, my country, wipe away your tears. Wipe away your poems, the old and the new, and your tears, and pull yourself together. The second poem, When the War Parts, is by Hiba al-Aga, translated by Julia Choquer Visoso. I won't be the same. Might become a closet or a bed, a gas canister, a rug, a library, a giant lap, one long embrace. When the war parts, I won't find a grave to visit, for the road itself will be the graveyard. There will be no flowers to lay, as they too will have died. No palms on graves, and no graves either. I will stumble on a head here, a foot there, a friend's face on the ground, his bag carrying crumbs for the little ones. Scattered eyes, I'll see them everywhere, and a heart that has gotten lost, panting, will settle on my shoulder, and I'll walk it through the rubble, this broken stone with which we were killed. No history book said how to prepare for the long war. No class taught to pitch a tent on the side of the road. No math teacher said that the corner fits 10 people. No religion class revealed children also die, also rise as a butterfly, a bird, a star. I hated chalk once, and the morning lineup too, but loved to pause in an opening line, stroll through the Eastern line, lose myself in the city perched on twin trees. But I am outside any city I know, outside all place and ejected from time to the dimension of Gaza, to ask, what has happened? What is happening? What is the name of our street? Have any of you seen our street, our house? Do the neighborhoods still know each other? Can the city recognize us? Can my mother? Is the sea counting the victims? Does the sun rise to shield the bodies in the streets? Can the merchants afford heaven? Will these bodies sprout tall buildings that bear their names? Their names. Will we know them all? My aunts, will they fathom the catastrophe? The house, was it really our house? Does the soldier sleep a night? My throat is swollen from words without remedy. But wait, this line home.
Thank you so much, Miriam. And sending my greetings down to San Antonio I just left there last summer, but thanks for joining us from there. We know Borderlands history is still living many of the experiences that we are talking about today. So solidarity with the people of the Borderlands. Anel, is Anel here?
Hi, my name is Anel Flores, and today I will be reading 7 Skies for the Homeland, translated by Hiba Abu Nada and written by Huda Fakhreddin. 7 Skies for the Homeland. In our lungs is a homeland, and on our breath an exile. A homeland that rushes in our veins as our footsteps edge toward it. It grows in the groves of sorrow, a vine of strangers, glances like tears hanging. It gifted us its tune and gave up all the singing. Can we deny it? Can it deny us when it is our blood and we have mastered the bleeding? In our books, hunger and bread are synonyms. Light and darkness are broken shards. I have learned to find hope in the extremes of love and rain clouds in the desert of rhymes. It's a homeland that returns to us naked, but knows how to wrap us around it like robes. In our blood it hides seas and launches ships with our heart throbs. It tucks its sidewalks in our pillows and its cities in our dreams. Will it slumber in us for eternity and continue to invent time again and again? Like these olive trees that stand as strangers, their color and taste alien. There is no room for us in this universe. Like a narrow corridor, it closes in. It's as if we're scandals, and our longing a crime, and the love of our country a sin. 7 Skies for the Homeland. Thank you. Languaging Memory by Lena Abtaleb. You, we, I. Do you remember? He was your age now, tall, the rifle, 4, then 7, then 10. Kulandia, Ramallah, September, Yarmouk, Kuwait. Can you say the name? Everyone wants futility. Let them languish and despair, disguising pride and cowardice. I am born in fugitive, the cover of eternity, clothing me. If not this life, the next. If not us, the next. They will forget. A list of massacres in my head by the decade. What has been stolen cannot be said. What do I know of theft? What do I know of loss? My lungs permanently damaged from the tear gas. I am scared for my womb. April, the fear of motherhood. What was I supposed to tell him? Miriam called. Did they think one begets emptiness? Father of what? The strikes left on me like an infant suckling. My daughter will hold them as I have, like her mother. She will grow into her mother. The banner of fire setting her aflame, the prison, the sound bombs, the stampedes. I grew with hands tracing the walls in search of radios, training paranoia. My mother's daughter, her eyes and her will. I know the shape of war leaves. I, too, played between the abandoned homes, stuck my fingers through the bullet holes like a portal, a looking glass into the other side, imagining the width of despair as if I am not made of my mother's fractured hips and begotten memory. I still know the shape of the bunker. We spent 20 years not eating lentils afterwards. Would you give birth in Palestine? I can no longer wait. I remember forever now, embraced in the still death, how memory becomes tangible, genetics permanently altered. I speak like my father. How beautiful you are, Habibi. To Bernie, I'll see you on the other side. Our children naming the fruits. Lena, about to lab, language memory. For the mothers and grandmothers and daughters and children and humans and people of Palestine and Gaza. Thank you.
Zainab is going to read now, and then we're nearly there, but this has been wonderful.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zainab Yasbobi. I am a poet from Nigeria. So I'll be reading 3 poems. One is by Mahmoud Darwish, and the other 2 poems are written by me. Okay, the first one by Mahmoud Darwish, The House as Casualty. In 1 minute, the entire life of a house is ended. The house as casualty is also mass murder, even if it is empty of its inhabitants. A mass grave of raw materials intended to build a structure with a meaning, or a poem with no importance in time of war. The house as casualty is the severance of things from their relationships and from the names of feelings, and from the need of tragedy to direct its eloquence at seeing into the life of the object. In every object, there's a being in pain, a memory of fingers, of a smell, an image, and houses are killed just like their inhabitants. And the memory of object is killed. Stone, wood, glass, iron, cement are scattered in broken fragments like living beings, and cottons, silk, lines, papers, books are torn to pieces like proscribed words. Plates, spoons, toys, records, taps, pipes, door handles, fridge, washing machines, flour vases, jars of olives and pickles, tin food all break just like their owners. Salt, sugar, spices, box of matches, pills, contraceptives, antidepressants, strings of garlic, onions, tomatoes, dried okra, rice, and lentils are all crushed to pieces just like their owners. Rent agreement, marriage document, birth certificate, water and elastic bills, identity card, passport, love letters are torn to shreds like their owner's heart. Photographs, toothbrush, combs, cosmetics, shoes, underwears, sheets, towels fly in every direction like families' secrets broadcast aloud in the devastation. All these things are memories of the people who no longer have them and of the objects that no longer have the people. Destroyed in a minute. Our things die like us, or they aren't buried with us. The next poem I'll be reading is titled A Poem Where Every Full Stop is Ceasefire for the thousands of Palestinian children killed by Israelis airstrikes. Insomnia and my eyes, lovers, ceasefire. Rest is a myth, says my reality, ceasefire. Even if my dream isn't about activism, I will think it a protest, ceasefire. I would say robbed, if acts of childhood, ceasefire. I would say graveyard, if acts of home, ceasefire. I would say shattered, if acts of tenderness, ceasefire. Truth, I search for night in extra airstrikes, ceasefire. For oxygen in strides of phosphorus, ceasefire. For families in robbed homes, ceasefire. For resemblance in flowers, ceasefire. For bluebirds in crows, ceasefire. For morning in morning, ceasefire. Someday, a child will say, The ruin smells familiar, ceasefire, and I will tell her her family tree went lost under the rubble, ceasefire. In the end, I will teach her to write her name on her arm and raise it when she gets lost, to ceasefire. But the end's end will be ceasefire, inshallah, ceasefire. Okay, the last poem is titled Bunch of Perhaps. It was written after the Shark Bakery was destroyed on the 2nd of November 2023 by the Israel airstrikes. Bunch of perhaps. Perhaps no one launched the airstrikes. Perhaps the bakery wasn't targeted. Perhaps the airstrike mistook it for a black hole. Perhaps the bread owner wasn't starving. Perhaps he doesn't know hunger. Perhaps he died, not killed. Perhaps the bread loaves were blood-filled. Perhaps Shark Bakery was too old to stand. Perhaps we might have gotten it all wrong. Perhaps it's never happened, just like the media said. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to read my poems. And I pray that the genocide will soon come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you. We all say amen to that prayer. And thank you. Those were wonderful poems you read, really incredible. I think we're running out of our scheduled time. We've gone over it a little bit. Thank you so very much. I know Jonathan wants to make a very quick announcement, if he can, and then we will wrap up. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for reading. I'm a faculty member at the University of Manitoba in the economics department, and this is kind of outside of my wheelhouse, and I've really appreciated this. It's kind of reminding me the necessity of poetry. I just wanted to say I'm a member of faculty for Palestine, Manitoba, and I'm coordinating teach-ins between the two encampments. If you're in Manitoba, or even if you perhaps we can organize from afar, I'm going to drop my personal email in the chat here. And if you are interested in leading a teach-in at one of these student encampments, we're in touch with the student organizers, and we've had a variety of teach-ins from lots of different disciplines, and it's been particularly engaging. I'll just say we are offering this to students, student and community organizers, and we're there at their invitation. But if you're interested, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carrie, for organizing, and I'll dip out.
Okay, thanks ever so much, everybody. We will have this recorded and up. If anybody doesn't want to be in the recording, send us an email, and we're very, very grateful. Take care, everybody.